right, welcome.
Gonna cut the
Here
throat
we
clear
are.
out.
Here we are at,
8?
What Inspires You episode. Yeah, go for it, Paul.
Yeah, it's episode 8. We're an established podcast again. We're joined today by, do you want to be MJ or Matt today?
I'm familiar. You guys can call me whatever you like.
Yeah, it's Mr. Struven.
Dum-dum.
Excuse me, Mr. Struven.
Ooh, man, I love when people call me Mr. Struven. So that's, you can call me Mr. Struven if you like.
All right. Matt Struven, a writer, you want to say? Is that you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm a writer right now. I do tons of stuff, though. But yeah. Writer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Writer and media man.
Writer by day, father by night.
Podcaster.
Yeah. There you go.
Actor extraordinaire.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Beard model.
A little puffy right now.
There we go. Now we got all your accolades out of the way. We're also, as always, Brandon and Paul, and we're talking this week about more inspiring things. So since I seem to go first most of the time, let's hear from Brandon.
Oh, okay, me? All right.
Let's switch it up on you.
Since I just did this recently over the weekend, which I was telling Paul about before coming on the show, I think that it's really inspiring when you take a little retreat and you take some time to just completely step away from something. And what I just recently did was my wife and I went out of town over the weekend for just a day, just one of those daycations. And we went to this hot springs place, and we were just able to get away from our phones, our emails. You're not seeing other people. You're just completely isolated, kind of out in not quite the wilderness, but, you're not really in your house looking at, YouTube or checking your messages or anything like that. And
it's pretty easy in Montana, huh?
It makes it pretty ezy when you go to Montana and you're just like hiding in the mountains in some hot spring somewhere where you don't even
I
really
didn't
have
even
cell
get
reception.
service anyway.
Yeah,
so.
But it's just amazing how if you take, even just like hours away from your phone or your devices or whatever, and you're just outside looking at the sky, looking at nature, small talking with people, it's crazy how your brain relaxes. You feel so much more energized in your body. And so people do this camping, they can take vacations, they can do all kinds of stuff. But when you really step away, and I think the main emphasis of the retreat that I'm talking about is stepping away from everything that would consume your attention or your energy in life. If you step away from all of that, even if it's just for a day, like a matter of hours, it's crazy how much you feel restored afterwards and what new perspective you have on life after. So I think that's my inspiring thing for this week is going on a retreat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that almost ties into what we talked about it last week a little bit, where it was like, because like last week I was talking about how, just reading an average book or something can take up your brain space. This is a personal experience, take up your brain space, and like, you're almost less imaginative on your own because of that, because your head's being filled with other things. So like, even like, in that way, like you're saying, just taking a step back, and this sounds like a lot more physically doing that, which I think is like cool too. Yeah. Do you think it's mostly just stepping away from electronics, or do you think it's like more of a getting away from maybe the familiar or something?
Yeah, I think it's both. Like, I think that you could step away from electronics and you could just turn off your computer and phone and everything in your house, but you're still in that familiar place of being in your house. And I feel like that still creates, I've got to make a to-do list in my mind. Maybe I should read a book. Maybe I should do whatever. Being it that we were in a hot springs, you can't, you're wet. You can't like hold a book. You can't, make food. You can't do chores. You can't clean something. It's just you, the outside, and other people around that you could talk to. And I think that that's a very different experience from if you were to just turn everything off but still be in your home or in like a familiar setting. I feel like you kind of need to have both. Yeah. So my question
for me then is,
go
what
ahead.
are you getting away from?
Yeah, I think it's
Problems.
I think you're getting away from just kind of the everyday focus that makes you think about, something stressful, work-related, to-dos, tasks, maybe even trying to be creative on something. It's just the idea that like when you're at home, and I think people get into this mindset more, especially as we're working remote a lot more often. So there's more like work related stuff to do at home. But when you're at home,
You can never get away from it.
yeah, you can never get away from the thought that like there's something I should be doing right now. I should be productive. And I think that if you can remove yourself from every possibility to be productive and you're just purely unproductive and there is nothing to consume your attention other than your own thoughts, I think that that does something really healthy for you in terms of rest. And, you know, we were talking about it a little bit last week, but just like whether it be fleshing out more creative thoughts or whether it be just helping yourself to de-stress, helping yourself to kind of think more in a reflection on your life, I think that that's a really healthy practice. And I guess my question for you guys, if you feel like I've answered your question, Matt, I'll bring a question back to you guys, is do you feel like there are either times in the past or maybe things that you have planned in the future currently where you're going to step away from distractions in life, technology, get out in the wilderness, do some kind of retreat? And what are you hoping, or what have you experienced in the past, the effects of that to be?
I was just going to ask
I'll
Matt
take a
first what his
stab at
happy
this.
place was.
I think it's kind of a two-part answer. Unfortunately, at this particular second, I don't have any plans to step away from everything. Unfortunately, I think you're absolutely right that we do need to take pause in our life. And I guess I need to make sure that I do that for myself because I have not been. I've just been go, go, go. And I almost feel, like you said, guilty when I'm not being productive, which is ironic because I love not being productive. So I just have guilt hanging over me all the time. And then I already forgot the second part of the question. The first part was, do I have any plans? What was the second part?
Yeah. Do you have any plans or have you done something that was a retreat in the past? And what do you hope to achieve from that?
So, yeah, I have done stuff like that in the past. So when I used to go work at camps across the country, we were basically like, we didn't have any communication with the outside world. It was our group of 30 people who were working at this camp. And then, you know, we'd see the campers come and go over the weeks. But we literally had no Facebook, no internet. Like occasionally someone would go to the store and they'd come back with like a piece of news or like a newspaper, and everyone would be like fighting over the newspaper. Like, what's going on out there? So I have experienced this separation from the outside world in the past before. And it does help you focus on what's in front of you, as opposed to being distracted by hot Instagram models or people who are trying to sell you their business ideas so that you can become rich, or, you know, whatever it is. It definitely gives you separation from that. That is super important.
Mm.
So where's your happy place, Matt?
The beach, which sucks because I live in North Carolina now, not close to the beach.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty good example of doing nothing, just laying there, or like, you know.
Yeah. I love it. I used to go and I'd like read a book for like 30 minutes and then I'd take a nap. I'd wake up, I'd like have a couple drinks, just look around, enjoy the sound and the sun, and then I'd like read a little bit more and then take another nap. I would literally do that for hours when I was working part-time a few years ago.
Yeah.
Literally like every day I was at the beach at my happy place. And you bring up an interesting point. Well, I guess I bring up an interesting point because I'm the one talking. Back then, I was not necessarily super productive with my life, but I think it was one of the happiest times in my life I'd ever had. I literally would go into the office like 9 or 10, and I would get off 2 or 3, you know, however much stuff needed to get done. I'd just go in there and do it. And then I would literally go to the beach or go to the brewery or like write all afternoon or whatever it was. And I felt so happy. And I was broke all the time, so there's a plus and a minus to everything. But it definitely makes you realize like you don't need to be busy all the time to be happy. Pauses are good. And also you don't need a lot of money to be happy.
Yeah, that's a good point, man, for sure. Well, I have another question to follow up with that. And, you know, you were talking about how you went on camps and you kind of like had a lifestyle when you were working part-time. And Paul, I didn't hear from you, so I definitely will be curious if you've done any retreats that you want to review too. But totally. My follow-up question is that how much time do you feel like it takes for you to go on a retreat in order to kind of initiate this feeling of rejuvenation. You know, I talked about how I just did a day trip with my wife. And so we were at this hot springs for several hours. And that was significant enough for myself. You know, you talked about, Matt, being able to go on like a whole camping retreat. And I don't know, I think you said maybe that was like a week long. Is that what you said?
So what I was doing is I was working at camps for like a month at a time every summer or something like that.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. But, you know, how long do you guys need to be away from everything? And maybe in what context, you know, is it going to take for you to feel like you've had a significant retreat?
Yeah, so I think, I guess it's such a complicated thing because it's like you're really diving into the psychoanalytics of like each person in their minds, but or maybe I am.
So that's my favorite thing to do.
Yeah. No, I love it. It's so I guess for me, like, I think Matt brought up a really good point of being it like helps you be present. And so I think for me, like that state can actually be achieved without even getting away by like being present, I guess. And so it's like, it's not the technology, it's not the, it's not whatever's going on around me that's like causing the lack of rejuvenation or something. It's actually more the mindset that goes into it. And so like when I'm doing things that are meaningful, like that's where the rejuvenation comes from, I guess. And so I think also like going away, the amount of time it takes is also depending on like how much, I guess maybe like stress you've been accruing or like franticness has been in your life. You know, it's like, I think you need to, like once you get away, it's like if you've been in a really hard time and you got like maybe family stuff or, you know, friend drama or whatever it is, work drama, it's like the more that piles up, the longer you need to get away. And so I think the better you manage your life, like that little day trip to a spa might just be perfect, you know, because it's like there's not a lot to get away from, you know, it's just like pure enjoyment. But I think for me, the biggest time in my life that I felt kind of that just getting away was going to Hungary. And so being there for like almost a year, it's like, I mean, I kind of both cut off myself a little bit and it was also just hard to reach me. So it was like double, you know, the real immersive experience over there and just being like totally isolated, not speaking the language of anybody else. It like really forced me to kind of just be with myself a lot. And so that was a time where it was like, didn't necessarily lead to good things or like good feelings, but it led to a lot of growth and a lot of introspection. So yeah.
Yeah. How about you, Matt? Do you feel like there's a time frame where, you know, whether it be like a month or whether it be like an afternoon?
I feel like I can get into relax mode pretty quick. And it's interesting, I never thought about this, but as you're asking the question, I started to think about it.
He's inspired.
I think once I have a drink, it kind of kicks me into relax mode.
Okay, yeah.
Like I can get off of work and I'll still be thinking about work for hours. I can go back to my computer, do emails, whatever it is. But as soon as I'm like, oh, here's my glass of wine, or like wake up on Saturday, I'll be doing chores all day and then I'll crack open a beer. I'm like, all right, now it's time to relax. So it's almost like the point in time every time when I can start to relax. And I mean, maybe on multiple day trips, stuff will catch up with me, but just means you got to start drinking early in the morning.
Pavlov response as soon as you hear the beer crack, you're like, I'm done working.
Okay, wait, that's my question, Paul, is it just the alcohol substance, or do you feel like cracking the beer almost like triggers the feeling of shut off things from the brain? Yeah, is it a ritual that helps you stop thinking about it? Like how much do you think it's alcohol versus ritual?
I would say it's probably leans more on ritual, just because it's like people are very not programmable. Sorry, Matt. Like not like it's why like in religions or something you have like liturgy where you act out, you know, like the spiritual principles, you know, because it's like as you do that, it changes you physically in some way, you know, and so. Yeah, I totally think there's like something to like doing things at a certain time or like associating certain physical events with, you know, certain mental states and things like that. So that'd be my guess. I don't know. I guess,
I'd say
maybe
for me, it started off obviously with the substance, but then you're right. After a while, my mental state goes from, okay, I'm starting to drink. I can relax now. Even if it's only had a couple sips, it's like, okay, now it's relaxed time. The mode is now relax, as opposed to getting super drunk and being like, oh, I'm going to relax now.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because if that was, that would be bad for the liver. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's interesting.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's, I mean, I guess maybe like that's something you can do for, like, people can do for themselves is like, you know, when you like consciously set something up for yourself like that, you know, well, it doesn't have to be, it could be whatever, you know, maybe it's like when you take off your shoes when you get in the house, that's when you're relaxed or something, you know. Like for me, I like taking a warm shower when I get off work, and it's just like cleans all the weird energy of work off, and like, okay, we can go into a different mode now. So,
yeah. I mean, for my wife and I, we decided that, okay, we, you know, over the winter, we're going to go to the hot springs we're going to try to do it once a month, so that way it's kind of this ritual for us that in the dark, cold, you go to the hot springs, you go outside, you get kind of that outdoor exposure, you get kind of this step away from all the stressful things in life. That's like part of the game plan for making it through the winter months and not feeling depressed about all the winter cold, you know? And so it's very much like a triggering thing for us now, that it's like when we know the weekend is coming up for going on that little staycation trip, it's like, oh, okay, like now we're triggered to be excited, and like there's no stress. We don't have to think about anything work. We're getting out of town like a couple hours away, you know? And so I think that is kind of a ritual for us that way. Yeah.
Even dunking yourself in the cold pool is like a type of reset. You know, it's like there's nothing like that to reset your mental priorities and all that kind of stuff. Go into survival mode for like a minute or two, and you're like, okay, come back out a new person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, there's my ideas on retreat. I don't know if you guys have any other following thoughts for that before we move on to the next inspiring idea.
You still have 2.5 minutes until your 20 minutes is up. So
who's keeping track? Relax.
No,
relax,
we'll be okay. We can move on to Paul's thing.
Yeah. So mine has to do with, I just listened to this podcast called Lord of Spirits the other day. I've been just consuming a ton of Orthodox content lately. And it's just like it's so funny for such like an old timey thing that everyone kind of, it feels like people wrote off to like be coming back in such a strong way. And just like a lot of like, I guess, influential figures now, you know, people like Jordan Peterson or whatever, are kind of like associated with more like Orthodox thinkers and people now. So, but anyway, so this podcast is kind of talking about, basically old myths and how, they kind of morph throughout history. So that's like what inspires me, is like all these things of like tracking the patterns of like different, myths and like, you know, these old gods or whatever, and seeing how they like basically it's the same pattern or like the same stories like played out just with like different names on them. So it's like the one I was watching the other day was like about Baal or Baal, and it was like, you know, you always hear about it in the Old Testament. You're like, okay, like, you know, you don't really know much about it, you know, and in that case, it's actually like the Bible, most inspiring book ever. But aside from that, it's just like there's so much packed into like so little space for what it is. I mean, people think it's huge, but whatever. Anyway, so like the term Baal actually just means like master, and so it's kind of like how Satan in the Bible refers to like multiple things. So like Satan just means adversary, and so there's actually like different references in the Bible to like different Satans. Like there's not necessarily like one Satan. I mean, there is, but like a lot of times when it's referring to Satan, it's just like an adversary of God or something like that. There's actually even one time in the Old Testament where a an angel of God is referred to as Satan when he stands in front of Balaam and the donkey, because he's like the adversary to Balaam. But anyway, so like Baal is kind of the proper noun one is associated with like a thunder god, basically. And so you can kind of like track. So basically there's Baal, and then there's like this other god, like kind of above him, his father essentially. And so he kind of like rebels against like, basically it's Greek mythology, or it turns into Greek mythology eventually, because, you know, like there's Zeus and then the Titans, and then Zeus like, you know, rebels against the Titans and then overthrows them, and then he becomes like the council of the gods, or like the leader of the council. And so actually it's like basically the same thing with Baal. He like overthrows the primal gods or whatever they are, and then like becomes like the king of the council of the gods or whatever. So it's just so interesting to see. And then like even they carry the same like attributes of like lightning and thunder and like all these things that like, you know, just either they get conquered by another culture and then they like assimilate that, or they, you know, the other countries kind of incorporate it and stuff. But what's super fascinating to me is that like the like things that don't have an element of truth don't really stick around throughout history. And so there's like patterns that stick around usually have some basis in reality. And so it's interesting to see like the things that have stuck around, you know, through thousands of years. And so, you guys, are you into mythology at all or anything like that, or does that interest you?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, so you're inspired by, was it orthodoxy? Like that was the original thing, or that was just the thing with the one podcast you were listening to? Yeah,
I would say I'm more like inspired by mythology, like seeing these patterns play out in like every myth around pretty much like the world, or in every culture. There's like these core myths, and it's like, why are they core to all these cultures, you know? It's like you would think that if everybody just kind of like came up with their own thing, and like if it's all just made up, everyone would just come up with their own thing, you know? Like, you know, you look at writers and they all write just massively different stuff. But when it comes to like these religions and these myths for their whatever cosmos, it's like there's a shockingly similar pattern to all these different religions and like myths and stuff. And so that's what I find super inspiring, is like trying to dig in and find like those patterns. And so, yeah.
Now, do you think that that's because there was like one original version of the story that was maybe based off of true events, and so they're all kind of repeating the true events? Or do you think it's just because, you know, kind of into the world of writing, there's only so many like story arcs that are like original story arcs, you know? It's like you got Hamlet and you have the Lion King. It's like the traitor uncle and the dad dies and the kid, you know, I mean, is it just because there's like, well, there's not really that many original God stories that you can come up with? Like there's only a couple that really work. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, that's actually the exact question I was hoping you'd ask. I don't know. Like it's super tricky, right? Like, I don't know. And this is what I'd love to hear your and Matt opinions on, but like, yeah, because you don't know if it's the case of, because it's so not just any story is a good story, right? Like there's certain things that make for a compelling story, and you know, like it's usually things that are based off like really fundamental truths of reality. And so it's like you can make a story that's just pure gibberish and chaos, but it doesn't resonate with anybody, you know? Like it needs to have some fundamental concepts of that like touch our humanity or something, you know, in some way. Like you can't just write whatever and have like things happen randomly, or, you know, not make internal consistent logical sense, you know, because then it's just unreadable. So there's like these patterns that people put into their writing, whether they're conscious of it or not. And so like, are those the concepts that are like, to me, those stories and those like original myths are talking about like concepts that are, like they're the best way we have to like describe those like concepts and stuff, you know? And so like you look at a story, even like just taking a biblical like story, it's like Cain and Abel, you know, it's like, there's so much that goes into that makes it a compelling story and like explains reality or maps out like these things that are going on behind the scenes that we can't necessarily see. You know, it's like, why did God reject one sacrifice and not the other? You know, there's like so much depth and stuff you can dive into it. It's like, why was Cain afraid people were going to kill him? You know, what is the mark of Cain? What is, you know, like, what does that symbolize? Why is there a mark on his forehead, you know, in the first place? Why, you know, all these, you know, all these things. So, yeah, I don't know. Do you think that there's, and maybe Matt, you can give a writing perspective on it or something, but like, do you think these myths are like touching deep truths, or do you think they're just people on shrooms writing about thunderbolts and flying swans?
I'm sure it's a little bit of both. Stories do come from everywhere. And I think to one of your previous points, like if, for example, we'll take like the flood narrative. I think most cultures in the world have a story of a flood coming and decimating the surface of the earth. So to me, that seems like it's evidence of something happening a long time ago, because a lot of people are passing that down. So there's that is actually a truth. And then I remember I was touching on Jordan Peterson for a second. I was watching a talk he did a long time ago, and I'm deeply paraphrasing here, but he said,
that's the best kind of paraphrasing.
Dragons are a personification of different things that early humans were afraid of. He was like, you know, you have to be looking to the skies because an eagle is going to come snatch your baby, and that's why they have wings. And you know, they have claws, and so you have to be careful of, you know, big cats coming to get you. Like, I don't remember every example that he gave, but this would be an example of something. I mean, maybe dragons were true. I'm not discounting that. I'd like to think that there's probably more truth to that than not. But again, in this example, he's saying that that dragons are a literary device to pass down information from people of all the things that you need to be afraid of.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. It's like it's like 100 different things condensed into one like singular idea that contains all the smaller ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point too, that it's like a story could have multi-layered symbolism where the symbolism is telling like a completely different story. And I definitely think a lot of ancient stories can have that in there. And it could be a symbolism referring to something that we wouldn't necessarily understand in our current context. Like you're talking about, maybe the wings are referring to an eagle's wings going to snatch your baby or something like that. It's like, that's not really something I would think about. In our current context, I'd be like, eagle wings equal America. It's like, there'd be a completely different symbolism in my mind, So it's like a person from ancient times could hear a story and think, oh, I understand all the symbolism associated with the imagery in the story, and that's telling me a different story from this, So that's an interesting thought that you bring up with the dragon.
Yeah, because even in like Greek myths and stuff, when what's his face? Who's the guy that steals the fire?
Steals the fire?
Yeah.
Prometheus.
He's like Prometheus, thank you. Yeah, so he like steals the fire, and then as punishment, he's like chained to a rock, and then each day like an eagle comes and eats out his liver, and then it regrows, and then that just happens forever. But like even then, it's like, why the liver? But to the Greeks, the liver like represented like passions and like kind of disobeying order and like like if you're living by your passions, you're not following like the proper way of like doing things. And so it's like, there might even be like symbolism there of like, that's why it's the liver you being eaten every day, Yeah, like trying to like remove him of this like rebellious streak, in a sense. But yeah, there's all kinds of stuff like that where it's just like, I love like that multi-layered thing where it's like, kind of like Matt was pointing out, it's like, it could be the amount, like if each thing in a story is the amalgamation of like a bunch of collective knowledge or collective things, like that would make even a simple story very complex. Like if each thing had meaning and symbolism to it. And so it's like, you might see, that's why like I'm so fascinated with the Bible too, because it's like you might see like something that's less than a page long, but it's like if each one of those things has like multiple meanings to it, maybe talking about like a pillar of fire or something, it's like you could, you could go on you could write a whole essay about that and like why it, and the pillar moves from the east to the west and that has meaning, and it's filled with smoke and that has meaning, and it's leading the people and that has meaning, and it's touching the sky and that has meaning. And so it's like, the more you then like kind of study that context or maybe the culture around it, like the more rich even like the simple stories become, which has always like fascinated me. So yeah. Is there any like books you would say, Brandon, maybe that like are kind of deep meaning like that or like significant to you in that way? Besides the Bible?
Besides the Bible, I mean like an ancient book with mythology in it, or like a more modern book that maybe has like a symbolic meaning. I think
just something that's like rich, anything really.
Okay, I actually have I've always really enjoyed Peter Pan, because there's just a lot of interesting ideas where there's this, orphan boy kind of leading this like orphan tribe, but really they all need a mom, and so then they like find another child to like be their mom. And it's sort of this weird like dialogue about, children versus parents. Like when you get old, you're like evil somehow. And so you always need to stay young. But then it's about how like they're all kind of lost and they need somebody to like be their mom or their parent. Right. But then they like don't really want the adults around to like be their parents. It's like they want another child to almost be their parent, And I always feel like it's just an interesting reflection of like how kids don't always know what's good for them or what they need. And they are really lost, and they do really need like their mom and their dad. They need like their parents around, and just how important it is when you have like good parents raising your child, like
and properly ordered, like social structure, family structure.
Yeah. Having good family structure and just how important that is, making a child not feel lost. Go ahead. Yeah.
And that's why, like, for me, when I'm saying like the stories kind of like good stories reflect a certain reality of nature, it's like that. I think that you're pointing it out perfectly. It's like those things all kind of point to like universal truths about how things work and like how things operate in like a good way. And those are like the stories that are really compelling to people. You might not be able to like verbalize it all and like understand it all, but on some like fundamental level, it just sits right and resonates with you, And so I think that's like why it is, in my opinion. But yeah. So what about you, Matt? Is there any like works or something that like sticks out to you as having like a lot more meaning than just maybe appears on the surface?
Yeah. So the first thing that comes to mind, and I have not read these books in years and years and years. So I'm sorry, what?
The book you wrote?
I read that occasionally just to toot my own horn, actually.
It's so deep.
This is so good. But I haven't read them in a very, very long time, but I feel like they're a lot deeper than just simple sci-fi. And that would be the Ender's Game series. Are you all familiar with them?
Yeah.
So, and again, I can't pull out every single motif from the series because I haven't read them in so long, but a few things that stick out to me, and spoiler alert here for anybody that is listening that may someday read them.
Like 25 years late?
Yeah, no kidding. I think the statute of limitation on this is like 10 years, right? I can just talk about it. At the end, when he finds out that he has been actually on this war campaign when he thought he was playing games. It's interesting because it's like they didn't trust him to make the right decisions. So that's one layer of it. And then maybe he wouldn't have even trusted himself to make the right decisions. The right decisions, quote unquote, being what the militarily strategic decision would have been, sacrificing his own men for the greater good. Maybe he wouldn't have been able and willing to do that if he would have known that it wasn't truly a game. And then at the end, I mean, there's so many good things in that book. Like even starting at the beginning when, not the very beginning, but when he's in the bathroom and he has to defend himself against all the guys ganging up on him, and he literally has to kill one of them to defend himself. And it's like you have to use the exact amount. You have to sometimes use more force than you would normally want to use to get the job done. And that was a lesson that he had to take, later on, and then defending and using resources. And again, I haven't read these in so long, but these are the first things that stick out. And then I don't know if y'all are familiar with Speaker for the Dead, which is another book in that series. And
that's actually the only other one I read.
That's the only other one you read? Okay.
Yeah.
And again, I haven't read these since like elementary school, like so long ago. Maybe some intense themes for an elementary school kid, but nonetheless.
We all are the way. There was reason why we are the way we are now.
Yeah, no kidding. In Speaker for the Dead, there's a race of creatures that are less technologically advanced than humans. And again, spoilers here. Ender, pygmies, basically right? After Ender's Game. I'm sorry, what's that?
Aren't they like pygmies or something?
Yeah, they're called the Piggies. They're literally called the Piggies, from what I remember. But Ender, after having had his victory in Ender's Game, he basically gets on a spaceship and travels like for thousands of years or whatever it is. Again, been a long time. But he has on his conscience basically murdering the entire bugger race. And so when he comes to the piggy world, where
this guy really knows how to name things.
Yeah, buggers, piggies.
Oh man.
Orson Scott Card, by the way, for anybody that's interested in reading. He has on his conscience this weight that he has to help this race not be destroyed by humans. Ultimately, is what it is. And going back to the original question that you had, again, it's been a long day of work. You got to remind me of exactly how it was phrased.
Just basically, did you find anything more significant than just the basic text or something? Was there anything that was kind of like deeper meaning?
So in this case, it would be humans are dangerous and we have the capability to destroy, but let's also make sure that we have the capability to rebuild and to save life.
Protect
That's kind
and
of where
stuff.
I was going.
Yeah.
God, now cool. I got to read Ender's Game and all those 18 books again.
Do you think there was any significance or what was the weird giant part where he goes in VR or something? It goes in a giant.
Yeah, he's playing on his little iPad and he has to kill the giant or get past the giant. It keeps stopping him and eventually he goes and kills it and destroys it.
What do you think the significance or the symbolism of that is? Does that represent maybe his journey in being a military person or something? In some way?
English teacher, what's going on? What's the symbolism behind the scene?
That's what always interests me. I'm why did this person decide to put this in their book? What did it mean to him when he was doing it? Was he just picking random things? That's something that's always stuck out to me. So I'm just wondering, why is that? Is there something special about that, or is it just
I mean, from my perspective as a reader, again, I don't know exactly what Orson Scott Card had about this, but it kind of goes to you have to sometimes use more force than you think to get the job done, kind of thing. It's a giant, and he goes and he kills this giant just so he can get past it or get past the level. It's very, very vague, but. Sometimes you got to do things you don't want to do to get the job done. Is kind of what I got from that.
That's a good summary of the book. Yeah, because he's always kind of resistant through the whole thing, or maybe not resistant, but he's always hassled, or there's always nothing comes easy really. And so
all in all, I think Ender is a very empathetic character. I don't think he's a violent person, but he's almost tricked into doing all of these atrocious deeds to get the job done. So maybe there's an evil within each of us that is just being used by another power or waiting to come out.
I think,
agree with that.
You know, in that particular scene, it really reveals the difference between real life decisions and game decisions. Because it's like, if he really knew that he was fighting this campaign to go up and destroy the homeworld of these aliens, he probably wouldn't have wanted to do it. And he probably would have wanted to like negotiate peace or do something different instead. Oh, let's try to like get into some kind of political trade deal or do something to try to like not destroy their whole planet. But, you know, because it was a game, it was like, oh, well, it's okay. I'm just trying to win the game. You know, I think if he really in real life had to negotiate with this giant, he probably wouldn't have tried to actually kill it because it was a game. It was like, whatever. I don't know. I tried option A, tried option B. I guess I'll just kill it now. Go on to the next thing, you know?
And that giant was real too, it turns out. No, I don't know. This just goes to show you, be empathetic to your video game characters. You never know if they're real. Okay, cool. Well, thanks for exploring that topic with me. All right, Matt, you get 19 minutes and 40 seconds.
Yeah, Paul took too much time. He took some of Brandon's, some of mine. He's just such a taker. Come on, man. What's inspired me? Well, it's been a long few weeks. I'll just give a quick summary. My wife and I, we went and visited Colorado for 3 weeks and then visited California for 3 weeks. So we just got back yesterday. Maybe it was late the day before. It's just been a blur. So I'm just exhausted all around. So you get the not best version of me, but that's okay. You guys accept me for the way.
We accept
that's the only version we want.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's been. I'll start with how I've been inspired and then lead into why. I've been inspired to be very organized and very sparse as far as material belongings, and very organized as far as my finances go in the last few weeks. And why that is a member of my wife's family has been struck ill, and they're doing okay now. They had surgery, and they're basically like in rehab right now. And so I think they're on the mend. But what it comes down to is because of this bad situation, they're unable to work, and so they have to sell their house so they can downsize and, you know, have some cash to live until they can get back on their feet. Very brief summary of this. And unfortunately, they have a lot of contents in their house. 30 years of material belongings. And so, again, why I'm inspired now to not have so many belongings and to be really good with my money. So in the hopefully non-existent event that ever happens to me of being incapacitated for work, I'm not relying on other people to take care of me and move all of my belongings out of my house and to care for me financially. And if this person ever watches this, I want you to know that we're doing this willingly and lovingly. But it's still hard. So that's how I've been inspired. Take care of myself and my family.
Yeah, because there's probably a lot of reasons to be organized or to get your things in order, I guess. But it's kind of interesting hearing each person's individual reason for why they might make that change.
Yeah, and I've always been a pretty organized person. Like, I like spreadsheets and I like lists and I like when everything adds up nice. Like, so it's not difficult for me to take the next step and be like, I really want to implement this in my life, but it's kind of like a kick in the butt. And then on a side note, it's interesting to see the juxtaposition of my family versus my wife's family, because my parents, they've been going to Mexico for 6 months at a time for the last few years. And they just left a couple days ago. And they always, every time they go out, they send out this email to family, and they're like, hey, you know, just in case we die, here's like a list of all our passwords, and here's our bank accounts, and we made you the executor of our estate and all this stuff. And it's like, wow, okay, so they're very organized and on top of it. And it just makes me inspired to to also make sure that in the future I don't leave little Mason cleaning up a mess when I die.
Yeah. Is your mom an accountant or something?
No, but my dad was.
Yeah, okay. It's like, I thought someone in your family was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
Gosh.
Interesting. So go ahead. Brandon.
Oh, I was just going to say, that reminds me when I was younger, when I was in high school and, living in the mountains in California, there were so many forest fires where my family would have to evacuate our house. And that was like a constant thought in my mind was, okay, I have to leave now in the next 30 minutes. I suddenly have to leave my house and go like spend the night at my grandma's house or whatever. And in these 30 minutes, I have to decide like, if my house were to burn down, what do I truly want? And I can only fit it so much into like my parents' car, And I remember one time when I was 15, I think it was the Gap fire that had come, and that was like the closest fire that ever got to our house. And we had to very quickly grab stuff, get out of the house, drive away. And I think that when we came back to the house, I only had like a day or two of time to be at the house before I was going on a trip with the church youth group that I was in to go out to Thailand to go, hang out at this orphanage for like 2 weeks. And I'll never forget coming back from that trip. And after the fire and the trip to the orphanage, it was like nothing that I owned seemed valuable to me at all. Like, what do I even need this stuff for, And so, yeah, I definitely agree with you that like getting those little wake up calls, I mean, for you, it's more of like a family health issue. But for me, it was like fires and traveling and seeing other people's, poverty. That wake up call really shows you like how little you need and how much you could get rid of or change or give it away or, yeah, it definitely changes the way that you view life, I think, for sure. What were you going to say, Paul?
I had a similar experience.
I was just going to ask Matt.
I want to talk right now. Just kidding.
I was going to ask you what was the 2 item or like a few items that you like material items that you couldn't live without, Matt?
Oh, me?
Yeah, if there's things that like, or I guess both of you. Yeah, it's a good question for everybody.
Well, here, I'll let Brandon go first because he's the most fresh off talking.
I think that I would grab anything that was sentimental, family heirloom kind of stuff, maybe some of my favorite books that I would have. I remember the rule was you just grab a lot of stuff, you throw it on your bed sheet or your bedspread, and you always have to grab a little bit of clothing too, because if your house burned down, suddenly you wouldn't have clothes. And then you just had to like wrap that up and throw it in the car. And I remember this was back when I had like a big desktop. And so I didn't ever grab my desktop. I just left it there. Desktop could burn, It's like in high school, your like video gaming desktop seemed like the sacred item. But then when it came you
took the GameCube, I bet.
I don't know if I took the GameCube. I don't know. But I think I took like some just books and letters and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really funny. So when I was living off of Cayo Real in Santa Barbara, that area over by Lake Los Carneros, there was a fire. Gosh, when was that? It was probably like 2019 or so. I don't remember exactly. One of those many fires back over there. And so our neighborhood was ordered to evacuate. And Brandon, I know you had to evacuate all the time. This was the only time I had to evacuate. And
is this the Sherpa fire?
Probably.
I don't know.
They all blend together. I don't know.
All right.
But it was nighttime, and we were ordered to evacuate, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go in my room and get my stuff. So I like grabbed my gun and I like threw it in the car, and I like grabbed some clothes, I threw it in the car, and I grabbed like my 50-pound bag of rice and I like threw it in the car, and then I was like, all right, well, I got more room and like my clothes and all that stuff. And I literally took apart my desktop computer, all the monitors. I unscrewed all of my HTC Vive stuff from the walls and ceilings, and I literally packed it all up. And I was like, I got so much shit. Like, I don't need all this. And I have renter's insurance. Like, I feel like that almost would be a fresh start. Like, I don't want that to happen for anybody. It's definitely got to be like heart-wrenching to have all your stuff taken away from you, but a fresh start might be nice. I don't know.
Like, what's the level of stuff you're comfortable with? Is it like, do you want each room to only have like 2 items in it max, or is it like just more like useful items, or is it maybe?
I like useful items. Like I wouldn't say I'm a minimalist, Like I definitely have stuff, but
Do you own more than one fork?
yeah, we have like 8 forks, but that's because I have a wife and she doesn't want to do dishes all day, and I don't want to do dishes all day. And we want to have friends over once in a while. Like this is part of the thing about having a family and like trying to have a social life once in a while. You gotta have chairs and like a table, and I don't know. We did downsize greatly. Like when we moved to North Carolina, I guess like a year and a half ago now, we literally fit everything we owned into one of those U-Haul boxes and had it shipped across the country.
Oh.
So we sold probably 80% of all our stuff, all our furniture. I mean, we got here and we bought more, so we didn't really succeed in downsizing. But it was very useful in realizing what's important and what's not. Like I had all these clothes that I was like, man, I want to use this sometime. These are like my paintball pants and shirt. What if I go paintballing again? What will I ever do? Or like, this is like these one pants that I use for this particular Halloween costume sometimes. Happy Halloween, by the way. What if I want to use that costume again? And I had just like drawers of all this shit. And I was like, I don't need this. And so I literally just donated it all and gave a bunch of stuff away and sold some stuff and downsized my whole life. I will say the hardest thing for me to get rid of was my keyboard. I actually cried a little bit when I sold it, and I don't usually get attached to material possessions, but that one pricked me in the heart a little bit.
Is there something special about this one?
I mean, it was a graduation gift from my parents for getting my associates at City College, so that's like kind of sentimental. But I wouldn't say that was the reason. I would say is because like I'd spent so many hours just sitting at it and. Yeah, I don't know. Not that I'm good. I just like it's all the artistic side.
All the WASD keys are rubbed off.
No, not my computer keyboard. My like piano keyboard.
Oh,
okay. Oh yeah.
You're talking to a bunch of nerds, dude.
Like, your keys.
Your poor mechanical keyboard.
Like my piano keyboard.
Okay, right. I was thinking that like it was like writing, like you had finished and your parents were like, here, now you can go like get into writing more.
Play RuneScape. Now that you don't have school, you can focus on your real passion.
Yay.
Matt, I was curious because you started off talking about the idea of being organized, and we've kind of gotten into this topic of like minimalism and getting rid of stuff, but is there like, what would it mean for you if you were to be like organized?
This is the counseling session for Matt.
I love it when I get free counseling. It usually costs $75 an hour.
Yeah. You can bill us after.
Here's a prime example of me being organized right now. This is not perfect organization by any means. I feel like it could be better.
He's going to show us something.
Look at.
We'll
I have games and video game stuff all on like one rack.
Oh yeah.
That's like efficiency.
I love boxes. Like I'm okay having stuff. Like you should see my shed. Like I've got a bunch of random stuff in there, but it's all nice and neat and in boxes. And if I ever need to find anything, I know exactly where it is.
Mm-hmm. Are they labeled?
I'm not against stuff. I am against too much stuff. Like if you don't know where something is, you probably have too much stuff. If you haven't used something in X amount of time, you probably have too much stuff. Like I used to move every single year back when I was renting. Like I moved in I moved 2012, 13, 14, 15, 17, 19.
Wow.
Like I moved like so many times, like almost every year because I was renting and they'd be like, we're going to have family move in or we're going to triple the rent or we're going to sell the house. Like whatever. It was just tons of different stuff. Or I don't like my housemates. I want to move, whatever it was. And so I got in the habit of whenever I would like pack all my boxes up, I'd be like, have I used this in the last year? No, throw it away. And so that kind of helped me keep more minimal. And I liked that. And now that we've been in this house for a year and a half, I'm starting to accumulate some crap again. Like I'm not going to open this closet door for you because stuff will fall out. And I don't like that. I don't like it.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, Brandon, you seem pretty organized, right? Is that something that helps you think or helps you operate in the world?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The only thing you can see behind me is my bookshelves over here.
It's your organized bookshelf.
That's the Silmarillion right there. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I definitely am a little bit more on that minimalist side, not near the minimalist that Paul is, having one fork or whatever. But
you see my blank wall in the background?
Yeah, the blank wall. Yeah, I definitely err a little bit more on the minimalist side, I think, and so it's easier for me to not have stuff. And ever since probably 2020, when I moved out of California, I definitely got rid of a ton of stuff and did not get a lot of new stuff. So I'm still kind of in that less stuff phase, and it's just easier to be organized that way. I think I could be more organized with like my papers. Like you can't see it right now, but below my desk, I have like a pile of papers, and I mean, it's 3 piles. Okay. So I have 3 piles of paper, work papers and lecture notes and stuff that I have to do for work. And I could probably like get rid of those, clean them up, organize them, put them into like a folder or something like that. And that would be a more organized thing to do. So, there's definitely organizational things I could work on.
Do you find it easier to work or operate from a digital space, or do you like the physical aspect of like organization? Would you rather have like a bunch of files on the computer, or would you rather have like a bunch of papers that you can like leaf through and stuff?
That's a good question. I actually do really like to be organized on a computer rather than physically, because I feel like on a computer, if you're like organizing your documents in some way, at the end of the day, once you exit out of that window, it's as though those documents aren't there, But I actually do get really organized. Like if you were to see my work document folders, they're all dated. Yeah. I've got my dates and my names and my specific notes that I put under them, and they're all like in a sequence, and I've got different folders for different things. I do get pretty organized on my computer stuff. That's an interesting idea, though, like organization of tangible things versus intangible things like that. Yeah.
No, I know the feeling of closing out the window and it's like, okay. But I mean, I'm sure you have to be. Whoa, what happened there?
Oh, Matt's showing us something.
I'm showing you my clean desktop. I hate folders everywhere.
Oh,
this
nice.
is my work desktop that I use every single day. It's very clean. Now, I mean, you get in here, maybe it's a little bit more. I guess it's still pretty organized.
Yeah.
Whoa, trade secrets.
Oh, man.
That's fair. Yeah, I love doing like, well, I mean, probably to even just be like a photographer to any extent, you have to be like really good at digital organization. Cause like, I can't even do like people who do like YouTube editing or whatever, and you have to like find clips from like 1,000 different like videos and stuff.
All right.
It's like,
is this showing my screen?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it is.
Even less
there
than
it
I
is.
do.
Look at that. It's just me and my wife, and I've got some core exercises in a little video clip way up here in the corner, and that's it. Anyway.
All right. Brandon wins. He had 4 folders less than I did.
That's just because I deleted it all and stuck it into other folders. It's just in my computer closet.
Let me move this real fast. Yeah, right. Open up one folder and it's a giant mess. Yeah, there's actually, for anybody listening that wants a really good note-taking software, there's it's called Obsidian. Super sick. You can just like, it's basically like your own Wikipedia, but like freeform, I guess. And so you can make notes that like link to other stuff. You can do like insert pictures or do whatever, like insert files and stuff, like link to files on your computer. It's like actually super sick. A lot of like programmers and stuff use it, but I've been using it for writing, like kind of like mapping out my whole world in it. It's really cool.
That's cool. Yeah. I remember you telling me about that a long time ago, and I looked into it, but I need to look into it again. That's right.
And it's free.
Yeah. Free is good. That. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're coming up on about an hour. Did we lose Matt?
No, I'm here.
No, he's still with us. Oh, okay. I see him.
Okay.
We got a little more organized and just cut him out of the conversation.
We're downsizing people now.
3 people, that was too much chaos. Back down to 2, back down to 1. Perfect order.
Am I your first guest, or have you had other guests?
You're the first.
You're first, man.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You're our first time.
You get that title to hold on to forever. We'll mail you a certificate and a plaque.
I'm going to throw it away. I don't like extra stuff.
Yeah, that's right. We're just going to give you all of our extra stuff now.
Yeah, the plaque comes with a bunch of pins and a bunch of papers and ribbons, and comes in a cardboard box filled with packing peanuts.
Oh, my daughter will love that.
Oh, man. Well, gosh, yeah, okay. Cool. We've been inspired by organization, mythology, retreats. Some good stuff. Yeah. Well, thanks for chatting, guys.
All things to take care of yourself. Oh, kind of. Yeah, we'll definitely stay in touch, and if you want to do it again, we're always down to have you. So,
cool.
Alrighty. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Catch us on the next episode.